Hello and good afternoon, Conversation 2 students. It's a sunny day today. I'm pre-recording this lecture. This is going to be week number 4, lecture number 4. So, fingers crossed that in April we will be able to have our first in-person class. So, this lecture is for the 25th of March, and April 1st is actually a Friday, which would be our week 5. I will let you know through the messaging system from the Cyber Campus if to confirm that we are going to do that, but that is the plan. And there was a huge spike of cases, 600,000 people last week, but it seems to have started to drop. So we may be off peak, but not out of danger yet. However, the good thing about this class is it is Friday afternoon. It's at 1 o'clock, and there's not as many classes Friday afternoon. So the building will be relatively unpopulated. So our plan is to start on April 1st. I may make different decisions for different classes, but for us, I think that's a safe bet that we'll be able to handle it. And like I said, Friday afternoon, thank you for taking the class, for signing up and coming. Sometimes students don't like to do Friday afternoon classes, but I don't have any issue with a Friday afternoon. Usually I find that I'm in a better mood. It's almost the weekend. When we're done the class, the week is over and you can go and hang out and rest or whatever you like to do. So that's the plan. Just a little update there. We're going to continue to do assignments week by week until we've gotten to chapter 5. So there's this one and then there's 2 more left. And then after that, we'll stop doing that homework assignment. I am working my way through all of I do actually have 4 conversation classes. So there's 80 students, and I've asked for submissions every week. So I literally have to read hundreds of these submissions in order to get a sense of what people need to hear. Because there's so many of them, literally hundreds, if you want specific feedback, you need to initiate the contact. You need to email me and ask me if you have a question about something, then I'll deal with it individually. Otherwise, next lecture, my plan is to, this will be the 4th one that you've done for me, I'm going to start the lecture out next week by giving feedback. I just haven't caught up yet, but I will. By this weekend, I will have caught up for the first 3 of them, and then I can give you all some feedback about what things people need to work on in general. Specifically, you're gonna have to look at your own work and decide, what you need to focus on, okay? Unless you don't understand or you need some further clarification, in which case you should send me an email. Today, we're gonna talk about life. This is the broadest category you can possibly have in this scenario, is like just talking about everything that's included in being alive. So that's not going to work very well for a question in the interview. So I'm going to alter it slightly. And this semester, I do different things with this chapter because it's always too broad. But for this semester, I would like to talk about life lessons. That's how we're going to handle dealing with this. What do you learn from being alive, and what can you learn from other people's experiences as well? Not just, you don't have to experience everything yourself in order to learn from it, obviously. If that was the case, then our society wouldn't function very well. So, as usual, let's talk about the grammar lesson first, because this one's a little bit more complicated. And it's not that complicated to understand, it's just more complicated to use. So the perfect tense. What do we mean by the perfect tense? Well, it means that an action that happened in the past is continuing up to the present, or that an action in the past started and ended in the past. I hope that helps a little bit. I'm going to make a little line diagram here. So this is our timeline here, okay? This is a diagram of time. This is us in the present now, and then this is an action that started in the past and has continued up until now. Literally, in a lot of Korean students, I know this class has a lot of international students, but Koreans often prefer to just say to do something until now, because that's what that until now means. But there's a tense for that. It's called the present perfect, right? Last year, I have been, I shouldn't say last year, that would be the past, but I have studied English for 1 year. That means I started studying a year ago, and I've been studying until now. So that's one way of saying it, but there is a tense. We don't usually say until now. Native speakers just automatically use the present perfect when they want to communicate that an action started in the past and is continuing until now. The past perfect basically is the same thing, except for instead of the action continuing until the present, it starts in the past and ends in the past. So you got the same idea. You've got now here, but the action starts and it continues, and it also stops before the present. So then you end up saying, I had been studying English when that's an interrupted action in the past, right? So you're going to talk about something like that, where I had been studying English for a year when I moved to Korea, okay? So she had read the book before she saw the movie. She saw the movie after she had read the book. There's two ways of doing it. So the same thing. She had studied English before she moved to Korea, or she moved to Korea after she had studied English. Just substitute, different words, different verbs in there. It's the same thing. It's a formula. It's a formula. So that's the past perfect. Let me not get too far ahead of myself. I'll give you the example in the book of the present perfect as well. This is on page 29, by the way. He has worked there since 2009. That's true. I have worked here for 2009. That's the year I started working at this university. They have studied English for 2 years. How long have you been at this school? So they give you two examples, which are statements. He has worked there since 2000. Professor Sullivan has worked there since 2009. And we can even put in, instead of the pronoun there, we can substitute the actual noun, Chungnam National University. He has worked at Chungnam National University since 2009. There's a detailed sentence rather than a general one. That's singular, right? He, that's just one person. And then you could say, they have studied English at Chungnam National University for 2 years. And we could substitute they for two people's names if you wanted. Clarice and Jessica have studied English for 2 years at Chungnam National University. So in the example, you see it's got the formula, it's got the basic verb tense for you to use, and then you can just add details. And I do want you to make sure that when you talk and you answer the questions in our interviews, which is the format of the exam is an interview, I want you to make sure that you provide details, because I want every person's answer to be different, every person's answer to be unique. When you have real interviews, whether it's for academic situation, for an organization, for a promotion, or for a job, you don't want to be different in a bad way, obviously. But if there's 50 people being interviewed and you sound exactly like everybody else, that's not going to be an advantage. You want to be distinct. You want to make sure that the interviewer remembers you amongst all the people in a good way. And being specific and providing details, more accurate information, and being prepared to answer questions with specific answers is a way of standing out from the crowd and making yourself noticeable. You are a unique person, obviously, so you want that to come out. You want that to be demonstrated through your, through your answers and through your performance in the interview, especially if you are in business. And I know 3/4 of this class are Asian business students, so you do need to be aware of how you look and how you're received when you're conducting business in English. Okay, so largely this chapter, to go back to the beginning of the chapter, it's about events in life. But before we do that, let's just do some casual conversation, because this should be our 4th lecture, and hopefully our next lecture is going to be in person on April 1st. So we're going to have conversation. You're not just going to sit in front of your screen and listen to me. Let's get ready to actually speak to the professor and speak to each other, right? There's going to be class discussion. There's going to be conversation. So what are you going to say? You can say, how's it going? And you can say, what's up? But, those are casual things. I don't really care, but I do want to educate you about how you should behave when you talk to a professor or somebody in a higher position, because people do care. People expect a certain amount of respect. If you're introduced to the CEO of a company or the president of, God forbid, a country, you're not going to say, hey, what's up, man? Or how's it going, bro? Can't be talking like that. So how's it going? Obviously, that's a familial, not familial. Familial means family, but familiar related words. That's a familiar way of talking. It's a casual way of talking, which is useful, but you have to be careful. You can't be too familiar with somebody who's a stranger, because they're not familiar, so they don't expect you to talk like that. If you talk like that to somebody who's a really proud, touchy kind of person, you can end up having an argument or a fight, heaven forbid. So it does say this in the book. It does say, how's it going, right? Obviously, the thing that Koreans get taught in school from a very young age is to say, how are you, right? And the proper answer is, I'm fine, thank you, and you, right? That is an evolution of the greeting that people with good manners used in English. Originally, people actually used to say, how do you do, right? And if you had a hat on, you'd take your hat off. But it goes back quite a long ways, saying, how do you do? And the proper answer to that, how do you do, is not, I'm fine, thank you, and you. That's not the answer. The proper answer to that, sort of old-fashioned, super formal question is, how do you do? How do you do? How do you do? That's, if you went into a room full of rich people a couple hundred years ago, that's what you would have seen. Everybody saying, how do you do, to each other. And it's polite, rather than answering about your condition, you're supposed to just inquire back to the person. No, how are you? But anyway, we don't do that anymore, so don't worry about that. But still, you can see the impulse still remains. How are you? I'm fine, thank you, and you. If you don't inquire back to the person, you're being impolite. It's the same rule applies. It's just you include mentioning about yourself. So if you just say, if someone says, how are you? And you say, I'm fine. That's not nearly as polite or friendly as, turning the question around and asking the person. That's why everybody gets taught that in elementary school in Korea. I don't know if you got taught that in your school, but that's pretty standard material. Anyway, don't bother saying how do you do, because an American or Canadian will probably think that you are, making fun of them, that you're actually being not serious and you're making a joke. So don't walk around saying, how do you do, because they're going to think that you're just being sarcastic and you're not being genuine, and that's not going to come off very well either. This is a greeting. Basically, this is a greeting. So, of course, the first thing you usually say is hello, right? Or hi, if you're being informal, but you say hello, or good afternoon, or, how I usually start the class. I usually say, good afternoon, conversation 2, as the case may be, whatever class it is, that's how I start the class. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, hello. Those are the ways to say it. You know the greetings. Then you can inquire about how the person is doing. The best thing to say is, how are you? But if you haven't seen people or you're checking the state of a person, then you say, how's it going? That's why it says, how's it going? On page 27 at the top, it says, how's it going? Because the person is kind of checking up on how the person is doing. So that's very important to do. That's how you approach that. And, just like business clothing, I could say, what we call business casual, that's sort of the way that business English works too, is that you don't want to be super formal when you speak. You don't go into work wearing a tuxedo or a double-breasted suit with a bow tie. You go in there wearing nice clothes, right? A sweater and some slacks, or a dress shirt and some nice pants, right? But if you go in there wearing ripped jeans and whatever, a bright colored t-shirt, I think people are gonna, they're gonna think that you're not being serious about your job. So we're gonna talk about events. I'm gonna go back over to this side and talk about events, because in the textbook, that's what they do. They start asking about family, first of all. You got quite the family there in the picture. It's Queen Elizabeth and her husband and her brothers and sisters, and her husband and Prince Charles, her son, right? That's her family there. The relationships between family members we're not going to talk about. So we're going to skip over that page pretty much. And we just talked about how's it going, catching up with people. This is how a conversation might go. There's an example on page 27. These two guys are meeting each other and they haven't seen each other in a long time. So they say, long time no see. Now you might notice long time no see is not really grammatically correct. It's kind of a strange syntax. Not that it's grammatically incorrect, it's a strange syntax. And that's because it was a phrase that was sort of adapted by Chinese people to basically say, hey, I haven't seen you in a long time, right? Hey, I haven't seen you in a long time. That's actually the syntax is the other way around, but people just translated it and it caught on. It became popular. The British and the Americans who were interacting with Chinese people started saying it too. And then it became like a regular phrase, long time no see. But you really should say, hey, I haven't seen you in a long time, or we haven't met in a long time. That's actually an inverse of the syntax that we normally see. So that's where that comes from, if you care to know. But we have a lot of phrases like that that have been adapted from, sort of transformations of the language. And then we start to use them as well. And that's what happens. It gets absorbed into the common usage, the colloquial language. Ken says, Dylan, Hi Ken, long time no see. Yeah, I haven't been here since last summer. So how's it going? How have you been? There you go. How have you been? That is your present perfect, right? Great. We have a new baby son and we moved last year. Wow, congratulations. Thanks. But what about you? What have you been up to? There you got the question again, the present perfect question. Not much really. We still live in the same place and no kids yet, just a cat. I was in the US for a couple of weeks last month. For work, yes, I had always wanted to go. I had always wanted to go there, and then this opportunity came up. And you? Are you still working at the bank? Yes, I have been there for 5 years now. Really? Time flies, doesn't it? Yes, you're right. Anyhow, very natural conversation. Lots of present perfect, past perfect phrases. That's a really good one. That's a really good one. Back and forth conversation. Obviously, when you do your interview, it's going to be one-sided. You're just going to explain it yourself. But that's a great back and forth example of how to use the perfect tense. Okay, so the next page talks about events, right? Big events in your life come around all the time. You're young, so the biggest events in your life might have to do with your birthdays and your graduation, and if you're international students coming, here to study. If you're an international student, this might be one of the most significant events in your life, moving to another country to study. For me, yeah, one of the biggest events in my life was moving to Korea and not going back, permanently to my own country, staying here, working at Chungnam since 2009, and I was living here even before that. But once I got my job here, that was a big event. I didn't know it at the time, but here I am 13 years later. So sometimes you can, sometimes you look back on events and at the time you didn't think they were that important, but then they are. Then there's the other kind of event, which is, it's a big event when it happens. Like when you finish high school and you finish your last exam, I remember feeling like, I'm free. What should I do? Oh yeah, I have a summer job. But I really didn't know about my future. It was a critical thing. I had only focused on my high school exams, and then I finished my last exam and I was like, I don't have to study. I don't have to study at all for anything. But I'm going to university next year, so I will have to study. But for now, I have 3 months, and I'm just going to do my summer job. And I just felt like, actually, it felt kind of unnatural. Like I've been going to school every year, and I've done public school, and you don't have you go back in Canada. You go back you graduate, you finish school in June. And then you go back in November, and I didn't go back to my commencement. I didn't go back and attend the ceremony because I felt like it was going back in time, like it was too late. I had already, gone past, the event was over, and then they were asking me to come back and put on my hat and hold my high school diploma. I didn't, at the time, I was like, no, I'm a university student. I'm not going back. That event is over. Marriage obviously is one of those huge events that people focus on. Some people don't get married and they don't know what it feels like, and that's okay, trust me. I've been married for 10 years, and I had a marriage ceremony, and it's a very stressful thing, and it's also, people get really, really anxious and nervous about it because it's true. When you do that ceremony, you're not married, you're single, although you are dating, you have a fiance, but you have that moment where, the ceremony happens, and then afterwards, then you're a married person. Before that, you're an unmarried person, and then, yeah, so people cry, and people run away, and people cancel the event because it's so stressful, okay? So, obviously, there's a lot of things involved in events. The big life events might be, a certain age that you turn, or a place that you do, a job that you start, a commitment that you make, a relationship that you start. These are all events. So, you know, different kinds of events require different things. Often you have to prepare a lot before the event happens, for it to happen. But sometimes the events are a surprise. I have a good example of that. You can choose, I mean, we're talking about life lessons here. So it's really about, you're going to talk about some sort of event in your life, and then you're going to tell me, you know, what you learned from it and what the effect of it was on you. I have a good one for improvising, because a big life event like having an accident, which injures you, you know, physically or mentally, psychologically, emotionally, can change your life a lot. So the first year I was here, I was playing soccer. Just like right now, I had gained weight and I was out of shape. But as the weather changed in the spring, I wanted to play sports. So I started playing soccer, and I was 28, I think, at the time, 28 years old. And so I was much more athletic. So I played soccer as the semester was finished. I was playing soccer as much as possible, almost every day. And on the last day of exams in June, I played soccer and I ruptured my Achilles tendon. It's the biggest tendon in your body. It's in your ankle. It's named after Achilles, the hero, the Greek hero. That tendon that snapped, and I heard it snap. It exploded like a gunshot, like a tire exploding, and as a result, I had to have surgery. I was in the hospital for a week, and I couldn't walk for 3 months, and I couldn't do any sports for over 6 months. So it wasn't until like the next year, it wasn't until the spring of the next year that I could really, you know, play sports again. It was a pretty crazy experience. The summer in Korea, if you stay here in the summer, it's incredibly hot and sweaty. So when you're walking around with one leg and crutches and sweating, and you can't take a shower properly because you gotta put a plastic bag over your leg, it's pretty awful. And I was here alone. I didn't have a girlfriend, I didn't have my mother or my brother or my parents or anybody to help me. I was in the Chungnam dormitory, you know, by myself with a broken leg. It was pretty awful. That was one of the most significant life events I've experienced. It was not a good one. You gotta improvise. If something happens like that, you have an accident or something happens unexpectedly, you've gotta adapt. So I did, you know, I survived. I even went home to Canada that summer, and I got pushed around in a wheelchair, and I had a boot. I had a plastic boot on my foot. These are the kinds of things that you might choose to talk about. If something like that happened to you, it's an easy choice. What did I learn? What did I learn? Obviously, don't overdo it. You gotta warm up, you gotta stretch before you play sports. If you're out of shape, don't push yourself too hard, or something in your body is gonna break. It's pretty obvious. There's other lessons too, but that's the main one. Coping. Coping means handling. Coping means adapting and dealing with something mentally and emotionally and physically, right? It was a hard time for me, so I had to manage my situation. Some people helped me. I had to buy a car, actually, because I couldn't get anywhere. It was very difficult to get on the bus with one leg, and so I ended up actually buying a used car. That was one of the consequences. These are all mechanisms or strategies to deal with a problem. That's called coping. You should always have contingencies too. If you're a good businessman, there's always plan A and plan B and plan C and plan D. If things don't go the way they're supposed to, you gotta be able to deal with that. It's just like, oh, if plan A fails, then I have nothing, so I give up. Life is not like that. You need contingencies. You need backup plans in case things don't go the way you're planning them to go, the way you expect them to. So you gotta look, any good planner, any good manager has to be prepared for other eventualities, things that could happen. Those are contingency plans. All right, so like I said, I broke my leg. That was pretty awful. We say when life gives you lemons, that's what happens sometimes. Life gives you lemons. So, you know, you wanted oranges or you wanted grapes or strawberries, you wanted sweet fruits, but you got a sour lemon and that's all you get to eat. There's a very silly adaptation of this expression, which is when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, which is kind of related to having coping. You're gonna get what you're gonna get. Sometimes you're gonna get something that you didn't expect and you didn't want, and you've got to find a way to do something with that. That's making lemonade from lemons. I really don't like that expression, but I figured I would share it with you because people do say it a lot, even though it's kind of like, oh, that's kind of corny sounding expression. But when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Like it's not that easy though. That's the problem with the expression. Anyway, we got one more thing here on the board that I wanted to say. It is true that life goes through cycles and life has big events, but you're gonna have to deal with those things, and whether you plan for them to happen or not, things are going to sometimes, you know, be out of your control, and you have to accept that, right? This is a very famous line from Bob Dylan's song, Subterranean Homesick Blues. Now, most of you are 20 years old, so I wouldn't expect you to know Bob Dylan. He's still alive. He's a famous singer, kind of poet in America. He doesn't have a particularly good voice, but he's very famous for writing insightful, meaningful lyrics like a poet, and then transforming them into kind of like folky rock songs, folk rock songs. I'm a big fan. Sometimes I just read his songs because they all vary. The lyrics, he's a master lyricist. He's a master writer. More so even than he is a musician. He is a good musician. He does have a kind of off-key, strange voice, but it kind of suits his music too. He's got to be close to like 80 years old now. So, you know, he was popular in like the 1960s. So long before I was born. I'm not talking about him because I was alive and listening to his music when he was young. He's not my generation's music, but this song is particularly good. And this is what he sings. One of the lyrics in it is just a string of lyrics. It's just a torrent of words talking about what life is like for young people. And maybe this will, if you listen to it, maybe, or read the words, maybe this will, you know, touch you or make you feel something about your situation and inspire you a little bit. Because other people, everybody's in the same, you know, competition. Everybody's in the same game. We're all trying to do our best. We need to help each other and realize that, you know, the system sometimes is not for our benefit, but we have to do our best to overcome these difficulties. So this is what he says: get sick, get well, hang around the inkwell. It's a poem. The whole song's a poem. So this is for me. I'm sick, I'm healthy, I'm unhealthy, and I'm writing and I'm teaching, right? Hanging around the inkwell. Inkwell is where you put your pen and you write. That's about him. That's about any of us who feel like, you know, our life is in cycles of health, and we're, you know, writing letters or writing our feelings or expressing ourselves through words. Get sick. Okay, everything's finally working. The end of the video got chopped off, and as you can see, I've got a mustache now, and I'm wearing different clothes. But this is actually the same lecture, so I'm just gonna stick this on the end. We already did this. This is week number 4. I just want to remind you, next week is the first class in person, so you should come over to the Humanities Building, W7. I put a notice on the Cyber Campus for you. Please do your homework as usual on the Cyber Campus. We'll continue to submit homework through that website, but the class itself on April 1st, it's not April Fool. It is April Fool's, but this is not a joke. You should come to the classroom, okay? And I will do my lecture there. make sure you bring your textbook, and make sure you have a mask, and you keep yourself clean, and you're careful. And I think it's better that we do our class in person like that. The reason that the video got cut off is because I played a clip of Bob Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues, and I got flagged for copyright. Even though I didn't show the video, I just played like 5 seconds of the song. YouTube flagged me and refused to let me share the video unless I went through a process of explaining why I was using the song, and it was for class and not for making money and stuff like that. So I just, canceled the download and edited the video and took that part out. So there'll be a link to this song, but I'll just play the song for you in class next time. And I'm sure Bob Dylan wouldn't have a problem with me advertising his music. I'm not making money from it, and it's free advertising, but I'm not gonna go to the trouble to explain that to Google. So that's why this video is like cut, and then I'm talking to you again now. So anyway, that's the update. Thank you for listening once again, and I will see you next time in the classroom. Just make sure you bring your mask and all that, and that should be a more interesting class. Next Friday, it says on the syllabus 501, but we're gonna do it in 456 because that room upstairs is a little bit small, considering everybody's still getting sick. So we wanna spread everybody out. So we'll be in a bigger classroom. So 456, okay? See you then.